Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to part two of Double Trouble with Jessie. And we're talking about creepy things today. So, Helen's Bridge. Well, I love being entertained. My favorite thing was being told ghost stories by my uncles. And of course, when I was a kid and their little shenanigans in the bush and everything, which I'm sure half of it was made up anyway, but I'm looking forward to what today brings. Okay, but before that happens, I do have our weekly schedule up now. So I'm just going to pop it up quick. There we go. Okay, on Monday was Jamie J. Really great show. So if you haven't caught that one, we were talking, she's a fantastic researcher. So we were talking about sexual programming, that sort of stuff, and how obviously that relates to MK Ultra. Then on obviously with Jessie now, Friday, we have Chris Latera and Dr. Juliet Engel. They're both Canadians. Chris being a Montauk survivor, and also MK Ultra, and Dr. Juliet Engel wasn't from a Montauk actually. She was from the opposite side of Canada, but the similarities in their experiences are actually mind blowing, and they actually come from very different generations as well. So, what interests me about these stories, again, and why I like to highlight them, is because it's the same template that's been used over and over and over again to torture our kids and who are now mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers already. Everyone started off in these programs being kids. So yeah, let's check that out on Friday. I'm actually doing the interview on Thursday, and then I'm doing one or two more interviews. So again, just check the schedule because I might pop them up this week. A lot of the guests at the moment can't do live shows, which is actually quite nice because then I get to hang out with you guys in the chat anyway. And then of course Sunday Loop with Jessie. Yeah, we got lots of cool shows going on Sunday. Well, two cool shows. So watch that, guys. And then without any further ado, wait, there she is.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you, thank you.
Are you? Yeah. Well, I really, and I think, as I said in the earlier show, so if there were any of you who didn't catch that then, I was hauled over the coals after last week's show that who's Jessie and why haven't I heard her story? I speak like I don't even
Right,
introduce you anymore. But I think I should because there's always new people actually coming on, right? But I do
right.
want to say that regarding your story, if you guys haven't watched Jessie's story or any of the other survivors and whistleblowers that I interview, there's a playlist of all their. Mornay's made amazing, beautiful playlists of all the shows we do. So please check out the playlists. Everything's in there. JC stories there from day one. We obviously don't repeat that every day. But Jess, introduce yourself, please, to those who don't know
Yeah.
you.
Well, the easiest place besides that to find, you know, parts of my testimony is going to be on timothycharleshomeseth.com, and you'll be able to see my affidavits, especially in regard to what we're going to talk about today, which will include Biltmore area and Gloria Vanderbilt. Um, but you'll find that on, again, timothycharleshomeseth.com. I was raised in, I thought I grew up in just two regular Christian homes coming together, um, only to find that really behind the scenes on the Jesuit Catholic side of my family, we had individuals that were high level members of the Luciferian Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military Order. At a young age, I was chosen to take the top position in that system, known as the Queen Mother of Darkness. And my training began at age 4.5, and I got out at age 10. So that's kind of a good backup, a good background, I guess, of briefly what my story is about. Oh, you gotta unmute, Shanty.
I had the dogs barking.
Okay.
So what I was saying was that we're all very happy you are out of that and sharing with us. So really, you do some really the best decodes. So I want to highly recommend you guys, if you want to learn the language of the Lucy's and how they're speaking and the buildings and the archways and the symbolism. Wow, it's all there. And in fact, that's also what some of the shows, one of the shows I know, I think we're doing, can't remember exactly which Sunday Loop is on, but it's also to do with symbolism that
Okay.
you're decoding. So yeah, one of the earlier shows. Cool. Is there anything you want to share with us before we open up in prayer?
Um, well, we talked last time about my website. I encourage people to check that out, kingdomlivingwithjessie.com. On there, you'll find my series, Unveiling of the System, where I really break down the system piece by piece. And you'll have to just be patient with me. There is so much to break down. So I'm getting to it piece by piece. I also have my newest series, Architecture and Altars, which is a very in-depth course on how to read the structures of the buildings, their architecture, and when they use architecture in the system, what's the meaning behind it? What does it tell you? And how do they use that in connection to the altars that they build and they sacrifice on? So, very informative. For anybody who's taken my courses or classes, have pens and paper. It really is extensive. You're getting master classes when you take each of those. So, as well as the decode series. But I encourage people to check that out. And then let's go ahead. We'll open up in prayer today. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for all that you are doing. We thank you. Um, we thank you that you are with us this day. We ask that you would guard our internet, our airwaves, and our connections, Lord. And we ask that you would bless this time together. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. Oh, I
Again,
like Captain's
unmuted.
comment. Sorry, Captain had me laughing. She said, gush on Jessie. Yeah, that's about it. That you get a gush, a flood of water when
Absolutely.
you take my stuff.
Gush away. I love it. Well, I'm interested. And, we talk a lot about Biltmore and all these dodgy things that have been going on there, literally beneath our feet. I mean, one of the things that I remember from one of our recent shows that I recall is one of the restaurants is where you obviously being served best food. I don't even want to think what could be in that food, people. Let's not even
Right?
joke. Let's address the white elephant here. And it's not a white elephant either, because beneath the restaurant is a human taxidermy.
Yeah.
Like,
Her
hello?
her her taxidermy lab. And I've detailed that in some of my testimony, but let's talk about that as we get into this because really there's a couple things that play a part. Um, Under that stables, you have her underground taxidermy room. How it was set up, like it's like two rooms under there. Um, the one is she's got this massive table behind it, lining the walls. It's almost like a old library catalog where you've got all these little drawer things that will pull out, and that was where she kept a lot of different supplies that included some of what I'd call the apothecary type supplies, potions, tinctures, different things that she would use in all of that. Then you'd go, and it looked, let me describe this too, because it almost was like an old cellar, like almost like your old Israeli type where, it's like kind of like just you got these rounded cellar rooms And I think, my belief is that it used to be connected under there. You have some old cisterns that used to hold water. So I think that that area actually used to be part of their their cistern system under there that would hold the water. Because then when you go into the next area, it looks more like that. You've got a part of a broken cistern, then like in the floor it's almost like you've got, like, 3, cut out rectangular, like, graves in the ground, but they're filled with different solutions for tanning, and, then she'd have, like, a rack on the side where she would hang stuff, and again, we're talking human stuff, um, but she would do it right there, like, that was, one of the first deaths, and you get her specialties were connected to water magic, as well as, you had Gloria overseeing certain priestesses for the Eastern Quadrant. It was her job to train them up. And, some of those included, you had like, uh, Marina Abramovich, you had, Madonna had fallen under her for a time. You had, I think there were sections with, training she did with Lady Gaga, but you kinda had those type of priestesses. Beyoncé was under her. Um, I think Meghan Markle did some sections under Gloria Vanderbilt. And I say that because both her and Kate, with the Royals, Kate as well, because they were in the running for, when Gloria died, Kate and Beyonce went at it for that position. So I think they both were under Gloria in some of their stints
Kate
and some of
as
their training.
well.
Yeah, I
I thought
think
it
she
was
was. Yeah.
Megan. So was it Megan, Kate, and
Meg,
and
yeah, Megan, Kate, and Beyonce. Yeah,
it's interesting because when we saw pictures not too long ago of them at whose funeral must have been Philip's funeral. You could see there's a lot of hostility between the two of them actually,
yeah,
Megan and Kate. Well, it's interesting that I
yeah.
didn't know. I mean, it's obvious that Kate is involved, right? Somehow. And in fact, I don't know, do you want to maybe say something about this latest while we're talking about Kate, or do you want to leave that afterward for
Yeah.
afterwards?
Well, we'll get to that. Just remind me, I want to talk about the pool there too a bit more. But like Kate had got, there was news that Shanti had sent about Kate getting a special award. Let me pull that up here. And it was a special, we've talked about how they put their symbols, the different orders, the different um, sovereign military groups that they'll be connected to. They'll have badges, emblems, and symbols that they'll wear, and you can decode those to know kind of what they're all connected to. So it looked like King Charles gave to Kate um, a medal that is called the Order of the Royal Heart, and it said for the first time since Queen Elizabeth II herself received it in 1961, the king has awarded Princess Catherine the Order of the Royal Heart, one of the rarest, most personal honors in royal history. Now, how this works and operates in the system is they call it an honor. But really, it's not an honor. You have to go through hell to get those things. But when you look at it, there was some pictures up about it. You'll see kind of in the metal, like you've got a middle part of the metal, and then you've got the gold around it, and you'll see that gold kind of goes up like it's got wings here and wings down here. That's common with some of your preceptor models, and it's meant to represent the seraphim wings. Um, we also see, on the left-hand side of the box that she got the medal in, that you've got kind of like an oval type eye of Horus. It's got a straight line through, and then that goes up into a cross, and you've got, two things that come across there, also being representative of your preceptors. So I think that Kate has elevated her stance. We know she's a high priestess in their region. I think that, what does it mean if she becomes a preceptor? It means that she'll be training others now up. I think for her case, that's going to specifically be priestesses, because with your higher level knights, you know, and as well as what those they'll call kings, some of your regional leaders, they will directly work with the priestesses. So I think she's going to be overseeing priestess training, which that leads us back to Biltmore then, because one of the other things circulating in the news recently is that Donald J. Trump is what would be the words repurposing. He is rebuilding, doing some reconstruction, and that reconstruction at the White House, he's going to be building a ballroom and stuff, but it includes the restructuring of the East Wing, which that just got torn down yesterday. It's my belief that as that's torn down, there's going to be some things that are found there, and that directly connects to Biltmore. So one of the curious things was that yesterday he spoke about Jackie Kennedy and said that, there were times that Jackie Kennedy would talk about the pool behind the wall, and she would say that she would hear women's voices in the pool behind the wall. And he stated the media uses the pool behind the wall. What is he speaking about? Well, that's included, in my testimony, that that there is a direct connection in underground submarine lines from Biltmore to the White House. In that, I spoke about that Biltmore has, there's the pool that's made public where I talk about the ritual that I witnessed Elon Musk and other boys go through there at Biltmore. But there was a second pool, and that second pool is under where they have the bowling alley there. But that pool connects also to the Nazi submarine lines. And you'd get a lot of things that would happen in that pool. The priestesses would play, water polo games, water sports. That would be part of the different obstacles that they would do in competitions, but not good stuff. There was a lot of bad stuff they did in those pools too, which included, drowning children. So um, I'm curious if that's what was being alluded to, and I'm curious what's going to be revealed in the process of this reconstruction. I hope it's all revealed. Um, that's a matter of national security. Think about, as we get into this today, the Helen Bridge area. Look at all of the national security matters that are there. And we have a family, a group, a circle group of people all operating out of that Nazi hub, which now is a tourist site, and them having direct access to our White House, to our, the base of our government. And in that are, near our president's office, which, who has control over some of the military. So that's a very concerning matter, something that we should be very aware of. And they were putting out news today that many presidents have wished that they could build a ballroom in that spot, but they just couldn't. Was it really because they weren't able to, Or was there more to that story? Was it because they were hiding something and, they kept a very small space there so that they had access to that pool and the underground submarine lines, and they could have their parties and bring people down there, but they hid it from we the people, you know? And, I think that's the truth of it. I think that they had wishes they stated their wishes for it, as a guise to make you think they wanted to do good things for we the people, but they never did, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, what I'm thinking here as you're speaking is going back to our previous show when we're looking at where all this money that is the billions of dollars, and that's just in one or two states in America, right? Let's not even talk
right.
about worldwide. That is being stolen from us to funnel their illegal, despicable activities and holidays and military programs and stuff. I mean, it must be funding stuff like this too, right?
Well, if we put it into other words, um, you know, what was built more? Was it, I talk about training, I talk about the different experiences, things that I experienced there. But if we put another word to that, it falls into the category of education, magical and Kabbalistic education. And really what we have is our taxes are paying for magic school. You know, I mean, that's what we're paying for. We're paying for their magic competitions and water polo sports and other things.
Like
Um,
Harry Potter in third dimension.
Correct, yeah. I mean, it
What
really
was
is. It's like the books are not just made up. They're not fantastical stories. She's really writing about things that are happening underground or behind the scenes that are not made public every day. But this is
I would
what
love
kids are experiencing.
I would love for us to do a Harry Potter decode. How do you feel about that?
No, I think we should do it. Yeah, yeah, we should do it. Talk about the
What
real
do you
and
all
the
say, you viewers? Yeah, because it's so true, what you're saying. If we're looking at Baltimore, and not just Baltimore, what's the other terrible place with the Rothschild?
Are you for
The
the
what?
Rothschilds? You've
Yes, the
got
one
the
where they do the
Rothschild
hunting.
mansions or the Black Forest hunting lodge, but that was different. That wasn't one of their magical schools for the high priestesses or high priests. But you get a lot of
It's
the
it,
mansions or castles that are used as magic schools.
but that's what I'm saying. It's like Biltmore, and I'm sure a lot of the other, I mean, the castles and stuff, in Neuenstein and places like that. I mean,
Yeah,
that is like in the Harry Potter books, we get led to believe it's the secret tunnel you go through, and you're on the train and
right,
you get to Hogwarts. I mean, this is like Hogwarts in third dimension, the way I would see it. But
right.
Slytherin lives there, right? So yeah, I think it'd be really good if we could do a decode actually on Harry Potter and look
Yep,
at the training, for example, in the books, that or the movies that they were doing there. How does that compare to real life training with the kids and weaponization? Like, do they really put the kids like that against each other, like Harry and Voldemort or whatever? Was it Voldemort? I can't even remember. I love those books, I got to tell you. I'm not going to lie.
yeah,
I'm not going to lie.
yeah.
I loved reading Harry Potter, right?
Yeah, you do get the wars, the games, the competitions. You've got your bigger circle groups. Your bigger group, I mean, they'll combine within your regions and your areas. we've talked about how their base core training group is 8 kids, and they'll pair each of those into, you'll have 4 groups of 2. One always, they'll do the opposite magic where, usually it's earth and air and fire and water are what they're pairing. And you can see the pairings on those colored jewels in the diocese hats, or some of the major churches, they'll have the hats and you'll see the different pairings. If they're green and yellow, it's air and earth that they're training in. If it's the red and blue, which is the most common, you'll get the fire and the water training. And then they'll tell you what their special training specs are. And there's different, access to different territories based on what the training is. Gloria Vanderbilt, is specific with priestesses usually, or priests. You'd get, she's got the apothecary there. You get training with, all sorts of stuff there. But that also is one of the major Nazi submarine lines underground that's up, there. So they did a lot of the tinctures and home procuring of the different organ glands that then they would make special elixirs and tinctures out of. That's one of the areas where they did, the procuring for the adreno, and the pineal gland was the big one. They'll mix those two to make a special hybrid tincture that they give the hierarchy kids for spiritual acuity. Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm sitting here thinking, and it might be like quite, I don't know, graphic, but you've explained to us in the past how the adrenochrome is harvested, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously through the pineal gland, etc. What is the process that they use to take it from that, call it raw form, into this tincture that they mix? I mean, there isn't obviously it's a alchemical process that they would use, I would imagine. Do you know
Not
how
for
that
that. I
works?
mean, it's pure, it's pure. So they can, if they, if they want to, they can just mix it straight. If they want to dilute it, then that's where it'll go through the alchemy process. Where like you'll see like the little decanter, and they're going to kind of apply a not, they can't boil it. But they want to make it steam, and they'll collect that. But that's not the usual, like they don't, most of the time they use that raw. But they could dilute it if they wanted to mix it with other stuff, and then, do that type of
Do
process.
they, if they're taking it raw, do they literally drink it, or is it injected? I mean, I know with the tincture, you obviously take it on
No,
your tongue,
it
or
was it was drinked or put into food, or some of it they would powder, and then they would add to different types of food as powders, or tinctures as powder, or things like that. And that's just like they would dry it, then take the powder for it. But most of the pineal gland stuff was mostly raw. And they, like I've talked to, they literally did it just like a tap up through the nose, and would tap it, and it would drain out into a little vial that they would collect. Yeah.
and I mean, and I'm thinking about the people working in the laboratories or in the alchemical process, if you want to call it anything, knowing what this is. I mean, it's a mind boggle to me that this is what they're creating and they know what it is. Wow.
Right? Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Um,
Yeah.
So we're gonna
Actually,
talk about, go ahead.
sorry, there's actually one question here that's popped up while we're talking about that from Bethany. So asking if when they do that, do the kids lose their spiritual acuity?
Um, I'll say the kids that they tap are usually not the hierarchy children. So, they are going to be the expendable children. And, um, I would say no, but I would also propose that they're never taught how to use any of their spiritual gifts, or some of them may have been taught about God, but the majority, if they're underground or being brought in through the underground breeder programs, they probably have never even heard the gospel or heard about God. And really, the system, the way that they view those children, they see them without souls. And, when in the breeder programs, they'll impregnate the girls in the fall or the spring equinox. And then the following equinox, they'll deliver those babies early. They literally, I'd see them in the Chicago area, other areas. They would have, almost like your old orphanages. They'd have all these beds lined up with these pregnant girls, and the doctor would go from one bed to another, delivering early. Um, and, some they're gonna abort right away. They're gonna just dispose of these infants. They'd put them in a little 5-gallon bucket. Others, they're going to save for ritual. But, they'd usually have a mother, or some of the grand high priestesses could do it too. Some of the programmers would do it. But, they've got those that they consider, or, having gifts. They're separate from the oracles we talk about, but you've got some that have oracle type gifts, and all your mothers are like that, mothers of darkness. They literally would look at the child, and they would decide that child's fate. Is this hierarchy? With a nod or a finger, they would decide like that, and then again, it would happen at age 5, they decide as well. So you got, kinda 2 different processes there on how they're gonna start weeding out the children in their quadrants. And, they really consider those born that they choose as expendable. They don't consider them having souls, which is not truth. The truth is these children do have souls, and they have been, even at before birth, they've been horrifically tortured and traumatized.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, should we start with the first one?
Yes. So this is about Helen's Bridge, which is in Asheville, North Carolina. So as we get into this, this is directly connected to Biltmore, where Gloria Vanderbilt is. And there's been a lot of, we'll say, ghost stories, speculations about hauntings here at this bridge, where people claim that they've seen this woman, Helen, who appears as a ghost here. And there's some other interesting things that are right there in that spot. So there's the question, in right here in this spot, right under this bridge, is there a spiritual gate interface? So we're going to get into that a little bit, the history of the area. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. So the history of Helen's Bridge, and I want to point out first this map that's the top map there. You see all the way up, on the left-hand hill up at the top there, you see a house, and then, it kind of comes down, and you see a, g- a fork there in the road. So the bridge goes up, like is kind of right in that spot in that fork, and you'll have the view of the house there. Helen's Bridge was constructed in 1909 of quarried stone. Now, if you go down to the bottom of that top map, on the left-hand side, and if you kept going, that's where the quarry is. But it was constructed of quarried stone on the Biltmore land in Asheville, North Carolina. Its purpose is to provide access to the nearby Zealandia Mansion, which that's that mansion up on that left hill. That's known as the Zealandia Mansion. All right. Now, the bottom left picture we see from the bridge, you can see the house there, or the mansion. And then I kind of have a map on um, the right there showing North Carolina, and you kind of see where Asheville is in connection to that state. So this is the area we're talking about. All right, go ahead to the next one. So Castle Zealandia was built in 1884, and I've got some different views there of the castle so you can see it. It was built on Bootcatcher Mountain in Asheville, North Carolina. It was owned by John Evans Brown. Biltmore, owned by the Vanderbilts, is an 8,000 acre property. So Castle Zealandia sits on 5 acres on that 8,000 acre property there of Biltmore. So you kind of have an idea. Go ahead to the next one. Oh wait, I want to say too, that bottom left picture, when you go to the Asheville area, you'll see a lot of that German style architecture there. That's a common look with the white background and the brown highlighted images going out. So that goes, German, Austria areas are high with that kind of style, we'll say. Go ahead to the next one there. Who's who? So on the left, we have pictures of Biltmore there and their property, and you can kind of, on the right upper area, that's like you see the property there at Biltmore in connection to the area that they have zoned off, which is the conservatory, where all the apothecary stuff happens in the gardens. Um, and So from that area of Biltmore, it's like that apothecary is off to, like when you see the castle or the mansion face front, the apothecary grounds and all that is to the left. Um, in between Biltmore and that apothecary, like that apothecary is, the above ground looks big, but if you imagine where you see those white tops of the buildings there, underground, you have two massive rooms and apothecaries that are multi-storied under there. And then the space that we see between Biltmore and that apothecary, there's massive underground um, submarine hub. The pool, like where you see like that interconnecting, area, that extra underground pool is to the left, and um, it kind of sits in that back left side there of Biltmore underground there. So um, on the bottom right, you see some pictures of the construction of Biltmore. And then going back to the left, that bottom picture, we see 3 layers of mansion. Why I like to show like that is because really you have a massive underground infrastructure under the Biltmore itself, and it goes deep like that. So if you go in that mansion, you can experience how big it is, but imagine that that goes layers deep. You have that, that many layers deep. It's a massive facility. Um, so the Vanderbilts, Biltmore and Gloria Vanderbilt, the Biltmore was constructed in 1889, so just a few years after Zealandia Castle was built. Uh, it from 1989 to 1895 by George Vanderbilt. The Grand Mansion took 6 years to build. It was designed by Richard Morris Hunt. Now, why I get into the designers and the architects of these two places is in my architecture and altar series, I explain what architects are in the system, how you have individuals that are specifically trained not only to just build a building, but they're trained in the symbolism. They understand the spiritual world contracts, and they literally are building places that are designed to sit in between the physical and the spiritual realms, thus enabling that spiritual component on the land and in these buildings, where then they're going to have contracts with spiritual entities. Um, and some of the buildings themselves are actual altars. Other times, the buildings are built specifically to tell people in the system where the altars are in relation to that building. So architecture is very important to understand. That also gets into them, communicating with each other where the spiritual gates are, where's the energy flow in that area, and how to access those spiritual gates and that energy flow, or anything else that they want to access, such as, underground submarine lines. They tell you how to access it and where the access points are. So that's why we begin to get into the architects and the designers of these buildings. Go ahead on the next one. And I see your request there, Michelle. Michelle's asking, can you do a decode on Newport, Rhode Island? Richard Morris Hunt was the architect for many of the mansions there as well, and as well as a famous church such as St. Mary's, where the Kennedys were married. Yeah, interesting. I'll see if I'm going to take a note here real quick. That was Newport, Rhode Island. Okay, give me one sec. I do want to write that down. Thank you, Michelle, for that. Um, and that was St. Mary's, where the Kennedys were married. Okay, thank you. We might do a decode on that. So the Vanderbilts, the nice way to put it is to tell you that this family line are Nazis. That's really the nice way to put it. When we begin to get into the Luciferian Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military Order, we know that there are those that are stationed in certain areas as quadrant leaders. They, will display their power usually in connection to a castle or a mansion. Their job in the system, part of their job is to oversee ceremonies, rituals, events, as well as the training of hierarchy children, whether those children are being trained up in the Brotherhood or in the Sovereign Military Order. So, George Vanderbilt, you know, it's my full belief that he was a grand high priest of the Eastern Quadrant. Um, in connection to that, he was building that Biltmore as a place that would be used as a training ground, but also, as an above ground structure to hide the massive Nazi underground submarine line and training base that they have underneath there. Uh, some of their dirty laundry, which is going to come into play, whenever you're hearing a lot of ghost stories or there's a lot of spiritual paranormal activity. Usually there's some open door that's been built, there's some altar in the area where spirits are connected to, and, access has been given for those apparitions and that paranormal activity. Many times, the paranormal activity occurs because they're trying to dissuade people from the area. They'll use it as a way to control who's where when certain things are happening. Um, but they will also use it to torment as a means of fear to keep control of the children that they're training. If a child runs in training or tries to get away, they can use the fear of those stories to try to, control which direction that child will run in. And then, they'll hunt and track that child down and bring him back. Um, so that's how a lot of things are used. But here we see, some of the pictures, the picture all the way to the right with they've got tables set up. Now this will just, if you have sensitive ears, you might want to tune out for a moment, but it'll make you sick. This is the fountain that sits in their atrium there at the front of the mansion. And it's really not a fountain, but in that atrium is, it's a spiritual gate. It connects up the hill where they've got a gazebo with the statue of Artemis or, Ashtaroth, whatever name you want to give her today. But so this directly connects to it. But this fountain is an altar, and on that altar, I witnessed them horrifically kill infants. And, here you've got, it used to be a place where they would hold dinner parties. People come in to think they're getting an exclusive event, but they're all eating around an area where they sacrifice children. That's not the only place inside the mansion where they sacrifice children, but that's one of the areas. Um, So let's go ahead to the next one. So let's look at George Vanderbilt. He received a lot of, they kind of coined the word recognition, but who was he recognized by? It's all Brotherhood Order groups. And in fact, he was involved in establishing some of those orders and sovereign military groups and their operations there in the North Carolina area. Some of those that he was recognized or a part of were the pioneering American forestry. His work was recognized by Gifford Pinay for Biltmore Forestry, and he founded the first forestry school. So you see that sign there where it says Forestry School. Above it, you have a Brotherhood sigil signifying that that is a regional territory and which Brotherhood groups are over it. Your forestry groups are going to directly be connected to your Order of the Foresters. Their more ancient name, the Order of the Tall Trees of, or the Tall Cedars of Lebanon. Um, so your foresters, your tall trees, or your cedars of Lebanon, all the same group. So, we see that. Then we see, to the right there, we see, the independent order of the foresters, their symbology there, and that one happens to be connected to a Reynolds. And notice, like, we'll show a close-up of that, but notice that looks like a cross of Malta. You've got the equal vertical and horizontal crossbars. But what else do we see kind of when we see that cross like that in connection to your foresters? We see our fire departments, right? Well, we'll look at that symbol in a minute closer to show you what's in there. But on the left, we see some of their other badges. You see the deer's head, which also is a symbol that will be used for your foresters. Why the stag or the deer's head? Well, because at the end of the day, you get a lot of druids are going to be connected to that. What do your druids need access to? The woods. Your higher level druids, are particularly going to be interested where oak trees are because they use the oaks to tincture the white oak or liquid gold, as they call it, which is an elixir that they believe will give them longer life. So we just show some of their other imagery there. In that where we see the stag ones, the bottom, we also see the shield with the flag representing your sovereign military group, the Foresters, or I'm sorry, the Sons of Liberty is what I meant to say. So, in that you do indirectly get some of your connections with the Order of the Red Men, but they weren't the prominent group connected to your Sons of Liberty here. So they tell you who their jurisdiction and authority is under. When you see the single eye, the Eye of Horus, that's going to tell you, that they're sitting in multiple circle groups, so you will get the Illuminati with that. When you see the sun rays, that tells you the Golden Dawn. When you see the laurels on the side that look, like you do there all the way on the right with the foresters, um, that tells you that there's a connection with priestesses. Whether that's, that their family line breeds strong priestesses or that they train, priestesses up. I think, I believe it's my full belief Biltmore was built to be a training ground for priestesses in the system, particularly in that eastern quadrant. And, they even have the girls' school. They're connected to Greenbrier in that area that we've talked about. So it's one of their purposeful training grounds. Go ahead to the next one. So the next one, we're going to see a close-up of that independent order of the forester symbol. And here you can see more clearly, you see the Illuminati eye up there at top. Then you'll see the two priestesses on the side there. You see what almost looks like those little badges where they show it in smaller form is meant purposely to look like little bees. And their other, badges look like flowers. Why do they do it that way? It's because, you've got a couple different priestess groups, the main one being your priestesses of Delphi, which are going to get into your older, contracts that are going to get into the study of Egyptian things, Egyptian scrolls, particularly, the Book of the Dead. And there's studies in that. And then you have your priestesses of Melissa, which are known, by the symbology with the bees, the flowers, different things like that. So, it's purposely made to kind of look this way for a reason, because they're communicating things. In that, cross-like symbol, like your Knights of Malta would have, we notice a few distinct things. One, we notice let's just look at the top where the eye is. Notice the structure of of that, how you've got it go out and you've got the evil, the Kabbalah evil shells or swirls at the capstone place. Then you've got what looks like these Aztec Incan temples going up. All of it is purposeful. What it would tell someone is that, they teach Kabbalah, they teach the different layers of the evil shell, which is part of their belief structure. And then that, that temple look going up is meant to look like altars, your ancient Inca, Aztec, Mayan altars. So, this is it's representing different things that they're building temples in the high places too. What else do those Kabbalah shells on the sides represent? In my course, Architecture and Altars, I get into showing how the architecture is meant to represent the horns of the entities that they worship. So, it's telling you who they're building these altars for to worship, and what, who's going to build the altars, and who's going to tend the altars and tend the worship in those places. And we see the above, below, all of it representing you're going to have altars in the high places, altars below under the ground, and they're also going to do altars in the territories, which could be in the water or in the woods, is kind of what all that's signifying. Let's go ahead to, so think about this. You get foresters with access to a forestry school and access to forests. What are they going to do there as druids? It's not a no-brainer. So George Vanderbilt also had further connections. Actually, go back two more real quick because we got into the foresters. I want to remember to speak about. Okay, no, I guess we didn't. All right, I thought maybe there was one more there. So go ahead. Go ahead to one more, or two more, I guess. Forward one more after this one. So some of his other connections, and this is not all inclusive, so he had more. I just chose a few, but you have the New York Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. He joined this historical and patriotic society in 1891. There we see all the way to the left up at the top, you see their sigil for the Sons of the American Revolution. Also known as Empire State Society. A lot of their brotherhood orders at the upper level, they identify themselves as societies, associations, um, and that is a way to identify that you've got a brotherhood group in the area. He also had, connections with that Empire State Society. The full name is Society of Association Executives, an association for leaders in the New York area. You have him connected to he was a patron of the arts. Patron is, and this is separate from Patreon, which is a platform where we have our shows, but in the system, you have patrons and matrons. Patrons are the males, matrons are the females, all right? And they kind of sit in these seats where they're going to sponsor, they're going to give their money for opportunities for upcoming members or members who are being trained up in the system. So he gifted his private art gallery to the New York City, to the American Fine Arts Society, another brotherhood society he's connected to. You also have the American Fine, I carried it over there. The American Fine Arts Society was created in 1889 by several societies joining together. So that's made up of three other Brotherhood Circle groups. You got the Art Students League, which we see There's symbology there in the upper right, the Society of American um, artists and stuff. Then you've got the the Architectural League. So the Society one of the Student League is the, bottom right, and then you've got the Architectural League bottom left. So you see all of them identified by their symbols, and the Architectural League was founded in 1881 by Cass Gilbert. And notice with that one, you see the Knight of Malta cross. You see George Washington's head in the middle, which often is a symbol of masonry. Then you see the eagle up top, which means that, it tells you as they begin to work on their degrees, what degree level are they going to be if they're connected to this Architectural League. They're going to be, degree level 32 or 33 degrees of illumination. So that's what that's telling you. All right, let's go ahead to the next one. So let's begin to look at the architects. We have Richard Morris Hunt. In my series Architecture and Altars 1, I explain the special position and training of architects in the system. Those who are trained to build between the spiritual and the physical worlds and create interfaces with spiritual gates and realms. Richard Morris Hunt designed Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. He also was the designer of the pedestal or the altar that the Statue of Liberty stands on. And then someone brought out his connection to the Newport, Rhode Island area. So there's other areas he's built up. Well, John Evans was the architect and builder of the Castle Zeelandia that we saw in Asheville, North Carolina there. Richard helped found the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. He also founded the American Institute of Architecture in 1857. He had the Queen's Gold Medal of English Royal Institute of Architects in 1893. Now, why do I bring those things out? I bring it out because that's his circle groups. Those were the circle groups he was interconnected to. Being connected to the Queen now, there's an important thing that we need to bring out because Queen Elizabeth, you have the queens there sitting in a special council and having oversight over one of the special councils. That special council being the Ninth Council, also known as the Ninth Circle. And, there's a lot of stuff we see about the Ninth Circle. Some of the things that we know about the Ninth Circle is that they engage in satanic ritual and they engage in cannibalism. So, those are things that we know to be true of the Biltmore area, that those people engage, they're connected to the councils in the system, as well as they engage in satanic ritual and cannibalism. Go ahead to the next one. So John Evans Brown was the one who built Castle Zeelandia and owned that. It sits on 5 acres on Biltmore land there on the Bootcatcher Mountain in North Carolina. John was a 19th century American who became a prominent politician and minister of education in New Zealand before returning to Asheville, North Carolina. So when we think of things, think of these people who, how can you be a prominent American serving in the government of another country? This is kind of how they would do things. They would, have that dual connection, and that really gave way to a lot of the trafficking or the underground markets would be another thing that they're gaining access to by having those alliances. Below we have a picture of his granddaughter on that picture, family picture, all the way to the right. That's Catherine Elizabeth Brown. So she was the granddaughter of John Evans Brown. She married Samuel Blood. That's the gentleman on the left there in that bottom picture. And their child was William Blood, who was the great grandson of John Evans Brown. All the way up on the right there, that's a older picture of Catherine Brown Blood, whatever you want to call her. What I will bring in here, it's not just because of the last name, it's an interesting last name that they have there, but I will bring in the fact that those at Biltmore, as well as the Browns here, it's not going to be public knowledge, but that area is huge in vampirism. So I'm going to just put that in the forefront. The majority of these individuals there are vampires. Let's go ahead to the next one. So Castle Zealandia, you see where it's built there, sitting in the mountains, that old German-looking architecture. Now, as we get into the architecture, that architecture became a way that they would identify places where vampires or those engaging in the cannibalism could come. Like when they go into areas and they're wanting to look, where can I get my blood, my adrenochrome, where can I get, human meat? What were Germans and those in Austria known for? They were, you get a high level of people that were sausage makers. So this type of structure became a way that they could easily identify just by the look of the building, like, oh, hey, that's a place I can go get my sausages. That's a place I can go get, blood sausage or whatever they want to, type of sausage they want to have. That can be a place I can, get my underground blood supply from. So that's important to take note of, that this Castle Zealandia on that property has that structure.
That's
So
just disgusting.
yeah.
I mean, is it only like when you're looking at a structure like that? Now, I've been to Germany and Austria, and yes, absolutely, there are every house pretty much is a similar type
right?
structure or
Which
building
tells you
to
what,
that.
Shanty? They're all
Well,
vampires
either,
and cannibals.
but are they knowing? I mean, if I go to Austria and I want to go and buy a house, and I buy a house that looks similar to that, does that
Not just a
mean I
noise. You may have
sorry?
vampires and cannibals show up then, but they'll figure
Right.
out quick that you're not part of the system because you don't speak the dual language. So they would know if you had just bought it. And, usually there'll be other symbols that they would put up. Like you'd get like in the, as they came into our country, they would begin to build certain religious practices like prayer into their communications. One of the common things, and you'll still see it in some of like the um, Lutheran, Montessori Lutheran homes, or um, some of your Moravian Christians, they'll use the candles at night in the windows where you'll just see a candle lit. So some of those ways became ways that they would identify which of those homes would be hosting that night or having the special things like which home doesn't have the candle up? Shame on them. They all went to bed early, right? Um, so there would be
Wow.
different ways, is there one candle or two candles, or do they have a whole row of candles in the window? Um, that would be different ways that they would identify that easily, you know, or
I've
hanging
really,
quilts in the window was another way they would communicate.
I've definitely heard that. I've
And
definitely heard that.
the lace
What?
curtains.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, there's lace curtains again in every person's window. Like, I mean,
right,
that stuff is called Dutch lace. It's
right.
got a specific name called Dutch lace.
And
And
the
I know,
design communicates things to them. How intricate are all the petals and flowers only four petaled, or are they more intricate? Remember, that tells you the type of sexual magic that they're engaging in.
yes. And I've often, well, often, no, I can't say that, but I've definitely heard about these candles in the windows, but nothing nefarious about it, just like something a bit odd, you
Yeah,
know?
usually it's representing, they're going to say it's representing their prayers and the prayer, the
Yes.
keeping their oil in their lamp going all night long,
But
you know.
what really is even more well, I don't know what's more disturbing, but when you talk about, obviously Germany and Austria are very well known for their different types of sausages and meats, cold meats, meatloaf, stuff like that,
Right?
right? And it's known to be particularly good. So when you're talking about obviously the symbolism amongst the vampires, right?
Hmm.
For which, where can I get my blood sausage or blutwurst or whatever it is they're desiring? I mean, how does that, is that also given to the average person in the street who's not a vampire, who's just
Yeah,
wanting
it can be. You
to,
can get average people that are going to buy that. Particularly you get issues health-wise for those individuals, like why those meats were especially, used was because of the longer winters. People would get a lot of issues with low iron. So that's why, they claim that there's a need for the blood sausages, and that then became a tradition or an art form for them on, procuring different forms of meat and utilizing every part of supposedly the animal. Um, but it's just ways they found to profit off of, I mean, really, they profit a lot. It's that multi-tiered profiting. They excel at that.
it's so disturbing because I would hope that at least if they're eating human meat, they keep it to their own vampire circles, and then they're not infiltrating the average person on the streets market with
No,
human meat.
no.
And it's
I,
so true what you say, because
yeah,
wow,
they branch
it's
out,
so
and
true
it's
what you
not
say,
just
because
it's not just the meat shanty. I mean, they tainted the milk too. It's everything. They've tainted the milk. You've got a huge milk producing factory coming out of the Biltmore. Um, I mean, they taint everything. Um, with their wickedness, it just becomes one more way they can get access into homes and um, people, think, oh, we need milk for our kids. Think about what they push even in schools. All the schools have to have milk. Milk is they begin to push as a developmental thing for your children. get every child on milk. It gives them strong bones. It, makes them healthy. So people openly open their doors to receive this milk, which, they've tainted, and it is an access point for them. That same milk, then, I mean, think about that. Then you got milk going into every home. What did they do next in the 80s, the 1980s? They create things like with John Welsh putting the missing kids on the milk cartons. I mean, think how sick this is when you really pause for a moment, knowing
I
what they're doing behind the scenes, and they're putting the faces of the children they tortured and killed right on the milk that you have bought. Thus, they're indirectly telling you you have played a part in the sacrifice.
I actually posted something on Facebook a day ago. Do you mind if I just read it to you about this milk?
Yeah, go
And
right
then
ahead,
it's got
please.
pictures, obviously, of these milk moustaches. So
Well, do you know
it
what the
says,
mustaches go? Take the picture off for a second. We'll get into the mustaches because
yeah,
that's a communication too. Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna quickly read this. Put my camera back on. Um, it started as an innocent. Okay, who remembers the milk moustache? How about got milk? An era that has been hiding something darker. It started as an innocent campaign. A smiling kid, a glass of milk, a white moustache on the lip. Got milk, it was everywhere in the 1990s. Celebrities, athletes, kids, and all flashing that trademark grin. On the surface, it was about nutrition, calcium, bones, breakfast tables. But when you really start to look closer, the symbolism, the timing, and what came before it, something feels off. Something doesn't add up. Oopsie. Before the glossy ad campaign came another strange chapter, the milk carton kids. Back in the 1980s, before the internet, before Amber Alerts, millions of Americans woke up every morning to pour milk over their cereal, and staring back at them were the faces of missing children. It was haunting. Their eyes became part of breakfast. The faces of little boys and girls, sometimes grainy, sometimes smiling, printed right there on the carton. At first, it seemed like a noble cause. The story goes that a dairy company in Iowa started it all after two local boys, Johnny Gosh and Eugene Martin, disappeared. The idea was to spread awareness, but here's where the line starts to blur. Because if you look deeper into it, many of those children's cases were never verified, never solved, and sometimes the data didn't even match. There were whispers that some of those kids weren't officially reported missing at all. That raised eyebrows. So, what if, just what if, those cartons weren't simply a public awareness effort? What if they required system of communication, like child trafficking rings of today? Think about it. Photos circulated nationally, organized by dairy networks, distributed to nearly every household in North America. If there were ever a way for certain eyes to find a child or identify who was available, what better system than the one that literally sat in their fridge in the country, right? That's where the theory takes root. The idea of those milk cartons were never just about finding kids. They were about advertising them, hidden in plain sight, a coded catalog disguised as compassion. And when that system started raising too many questions, uh, poof, it quietly disappeared. By early 1993, the milk carton faces faded away, replaced instead by something new, the Got Milk campaign. And what did they show? Smiling faces again, children again, milk on their lips. But this time, it wasn't sadness or concern, it was celebration. It flipped the energy completely. From missing kids on milk to kids modeling milk on their upper lip. Coincidence? Maybe. But when you connect the dots, it's eerie how quickly the imagery shifted from missing and endangered to glamorous and global. The faces that once cried for help were replaced with those of celebrities and perfect children under studio lights. The same product, the same imagery, a totally different message. If you were in that elite circle, the one that thrives in symbolism, coded language, and control, maybe this was your signal: the milk moustache, the clean, innocent face, the smile, the idea that innocence could be branded, sold, and consumed. Sick, right? It's a dark thought, but then again, so is the reality of what we now know about trafficking rings, government cover ups, and how institutions hide exploitation behind polished marketing. It's all sickening to think about. So maybe the Got Milk slogan wasn't about healthy bones and breakfast. Maybe it was a slow cover up, rebranding the carton to hide the truth after being exposed, the smile to make us forget. After all, the best secrets aren't hidden underground, they're hidden in plain sight. Right on the breakfast table, back then and now.
Yeah. So let's quickly get into that. You have the Order of the Mustache Club, and who you're going to find in that club is going to be certain military men, including some of your National Guard. Now, as I say some of this stuff, it's going to get into your policemen, your fire departments, your support services like EMTs can all be part of that mustache club. Now, we are not saying that every man who has a mustache is part of the mustache club. I want to be very clear about that. But this became one of the ways that they would signify certain rights or things that they have done. Knowing that they're all part of a mustache club, what are they going to be engaged in? It's going to be the child pornography or the child porn. And in that, you know, got milk is going to represent something sexual. And, if you've got sensitive ears, I encourage you just tune out for just a second here. But what is it representing? You have military men, you have police officers, you have fire department men, you have support service people who are all going to be gathering together for this child corn, and basically they will rape the children orally, and until the ejaculation comes out their nose and makes that mustache. That's what that is representing. That's what milk is, and that's when they'd say got milk. Um, yeah, that's how bad it is. And these are little kids, you know, all the way up to older kids, but mostly little kids. And that's where they're pushing it. Your elementary, your toddler, elementary years is when they're pushing that. And this is happening right within these kids' communities. You know, um, there it's a threat to the children that are part of those corn rings. It's a constant reminder every morning that they're gonna keep their mouth shut. They're bound by the code of silence. They're gonna eat their breakfast. They're gonna go to school, and they're gonna do their job without saying a word. You know, at the same time with that, as the kids in that, they make it funny. It'll be something that, you know, they'll all laugh, they'll all tease, and it's like after they abuse the kid, then they'll celebrate. Oh, look at you, good job. Look, you got milked. And they make it kind of a funny thing, and that's part of how they cover and hide the abuse, you know. Make it so that when the kid sees it, they laugh and smile, even though, it was a horrific time.
Wow, that is on another level depraved. I have no
Yeah.
idea what to say to that. I mean, sure.
Yeah,
Um,
so
uh,
this area, I mean, it's huge with this. Let's go ahead to the next one here. I think, how many more slides do we have here on this one?
let me just check. Sorry, I got completely waylaid there.
Yeah, we did.
I think did we do this one yet?
Yep, we did.
And then I think we did that one, right?
Yep. Was that the
Then
last
there's
one?
one more.
Okay, one
This is
more.
the
Yeah.
last one coming now. This is the last
Oh,
one
okay.
here. Okay,
So
yeah.
I guess we were done then with
That's you,
that.
Jessie.
We ended on the sad note of what those things really mean and represent. Um, you know, it's so important to understand the symbols, the language that they use. I mean, how easily they use just even, facial hair as a way to communicate what they do. And, there's much worse things than what we talked about just now that they do to the children. Part of the milk thing goes back also, you get different areas where the child corn is going to happen, and you'll get different scenarios that I don't know another way to describe it other than then they create simulations or simulation environments, and a lot of their massive corn production is based off of these simulation environments. Um, where you don't just have a kid in a room, I mean, we're talking entire mansions, we're talking entire areas. Their production can include a massive area, multiple players in the production. And each time they go to that place and do a production, it's going to vary. But based on the child, based on the reactions, based on the choices. It's kind of like a pick your choice, pick your end of the story novel. You get something different every time. So, the milk also goes, one of their main production areas, you've got the Milky Way galaxy and you have Andromeda connected to that. Um, both of those areas are going to be connected to Montauk. So, when they would, um, the Milky Way productions is one of the biggest ones that would happen there at Montauk. So,
And the other one, did you say, was Andromeda?
yep, Andromeda is another area there. That's more your sci, if I could put a few words to it, you're going to have more of like your Star Trek, intergalactic. They'll bring in the aliens, you'll have the spaceships, you'll have the travel through the spiritual gates. You might have the Jedi, the Sith type wars. You'll get the Borgs coming in there, the half human, half, you know, engineered type creature things. Andromeda is much more graphic than the Milky Way galaxy. Milky Way galaxy is mostly sexual. Andromeda is going to get into dark, dark, that's what I'll just say, dark, evil things, you know. Dungeon and
Movies.
Dragons would be another good way to put it. They've basically combined
Yeah,
their live role-playing action games with their creation of their choreography, you know.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking along those lines. And I mean, I just want to say to the viewers as well, the reason why we don't say certain words is not because everyone's a grown up. We understand that, but they're just certain words. I mean, you all know me. I'm quite happy to hit those algorithms, but I don't want to have us completely knocked out of YouTube quite yet. We're not quite ready yet. Um, wow, that is so disturbing, though. That is like
Yeah.
seriously disturbing. Who in your opinion owns Montauk or that whole base? Because the same
Yeah,
people that own CERN, I'm hearing.
right?
So who are who are
Well,
the owners of
just
this?
across, or I guess it goes the other way. I gotta go the other way because I'm the camera changes the view. But Montauk's here, just across, you've got another island with good old Martha Stewart, the homemaker woman who's a cook. I mean, it should make you mad. You got good old Martha Stewart's vineyard, and then who else bought into that territory? You got
Yeah.
Barack and Michelle Obama.
Yep.
I think that's
Wow.
current. I wouldn't say it's all exclusive. You've got other individuals who have bought into that piece of the pie, but those are two of the people who own that piece of that pie. And we know Barack being, the sitting in the top seat in the general council, as the Phoenix. So think of that. Now you've got a connection directly with the, United Nations, and so it goes worldwide. It's international trafficking and pornography production.
What do you think? I've had a couple of Montauk survivors say that a lot of the Montauk stuff goes back to the Mothers of Darkness. I'm not sure in what context that is, though. What would you say would the context be on why they would say that?
Well, you get layers, different things that they're going to be trained for. Um, that area, some of the kids made it to the being trained with infernals, which, we did an episode where we talked about, what the infernals are, what that means. You've got different elemental entities that, they're going to be people in the system are going to be connecting to use in their battles or to do certain things that they want to do. And you've got entities that are fire. You've got realms or spiritual gates that are infernal gates, fire gates. So who, even your massive ones under the water, who is overseeing those things? Um, you've got to have people who are trained to know how to control, contain, um, you know, harvest those entities or the energy that's connected to them. That's where your mothers of darkness come in as people that, are holders of those secrets, knowing where certain areas are, what are the accesses to those, and how do you keep it either contained or how do you use it, you know? And, I encourage all, you know, Montauk boys, don't mess with the infernals, keep them where they're at. They like to get into more shenanigans than I do, but
Wow.
create
So
disasters.
basically, they would
We'll put it that
oversee.
way.
Yeah.
Right.
So they would basically be overseeing everything that occurs.
Well, you use your
So they would
military
obviously be,
to you use your
yeah,
military
you'd
to
have your
secure
people.
up
Mm.
your assets, your treasures, your connections. They're gonna secure things up, but um sometimes you get those that just don't listen, and that's when you have your mothers and trust people, they train people to do that. But then, if those people are training someone and something goes wrong, then they're going to have the mothers step in there. Um, that's kind of the long and short, but overall your all your programs, overseeing all those, you had Colonel Michael Aquino over all the ones in the West. Montauk was the Eastern program. Who's over all the programs in the East? Uh, John O'Brennan. He's lied about a lot more than just stuff with Hillary Clinton. I can guarantee you that. Um, but John O'Brennan, Boo, would have been directly over that program and oversight their training in that being from, the Nazi Michael Karkock, who, initially was over all of those things and getting them structured and instituted in our country, and the different things that they would do through those programs, which should make you mad, because we're told that Knights Templars are supposed to be, you know, holy men,
Men of
good
honor.
knights, and yet what are they doing? They're overseeing all the different simulations and live role-playing action games that are the, chronography, both for light side, which is, here's how they define it. Your light side is going to be the good, clean porn, legal porn, right? And, they consider pedophilia a form of legal porn. They consider bestiality a form of legal porn. So if it's just that natural as it is, that's their light side. Their dark side is, where you're gonna get the much worse, the graphic, beyond just the regular sex or rape.
You were talking earlier on about facial hair and what that means. I wouldn't mind at some point even doing a quick, I mean, sort of a decode on that. But interesting. I mean, I can't help but think about Aquino's eyebrows. I mean, was there any symbolism in that?
I
Because
think
the
that was
first time
just
I
because he
saw
was
him,
quirky. I think he had,
all right,
colics. He had colics that he couldn't control, and you'll see a lot of the grand high priests will identify themselves with their quirky facial hair, whether it's like, spike hair sticking up in one direction, or you'll see like the curls. You'd get these like elaborate beards. Um, they also could just use like a bow tie if they were clean cut and clean shaven. They have different ways that, based on which councils or which special groups they're sitting in, that they'll identify themselves. Like the Audubon Society, usually you see all of them with that fedora hat and you'll see a feather in the hat. The same with you've got the priestess groups, the Red Hats Club, where all the women have the red hats. So they'd find different ways to identify so they would, know which circle groups they were sitting in.
wild. Deb,
Right?
thank you so much, new member to the Arab tribe. Welcome. I hope you enjoy, and I really appreciate your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow, I mean, well, of course, as per usual, there's a million questions, but I think we've had
Yeah, we've
you
maxed out
in
on
the
our
hot seat.
times.
I think we've had you in the hot seat for long enough today, Jess. So thank you so much for, again, this is not a easy topic. These aren't easy topics to listen to. It's just
Yeah,
beyond gross. Something I cannot actually imagine some of the things. I mean, that milk moustache story is like, what the heck? And I mean, these poor babies that have to endure these monsters. I
right?
tell you, um, yeah, let's just keep shedding light on these atrocities. We don't do this for sensationalism. I wish we didn't have to do this,
Yeah,
but we do it because it's knowledge. And as crazy as what it sounds to the rest of the world, we've got to keep this light shining for these people that are suffering and have suffered at the hands of these monsters. That's really what they are.
yeah,
So thank you, everybody. Appreciate you all in the chat. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. Just keep the algorithm going. And then, just people need to know.
yeah.
Oh. Anyway, Jess, is there anything you'd like to end off with before you
No,
end off for us in
let's
prayer?
Yeah, let's go ahead and pray. Heavenly Father, we just come before you today and we just lift up the heaviness of the conversation today. Lord, we give it to you. We place it in your hands. We know that you see, that you hear, that you know all that goes on in the darkness. Your word says that there comes that day where everything shall be laid naked and bare before the eyes of the world, Lord. We thank you that even this, Lord, that you've laid naked and bare the truths of what is happening to the children, Lord. We ask, Father God, for each one, Lord, that one, that you would deliver them out of the hands of their enemies. We ask, Father God, that you would bring justice, that you would step in and procure that, that you would make that way straight for that to happen. And we ask, Father God, that we may create a society, uh, both at quadrant and regional levels, Lord, where our children are safe, where they can go to school, where they can go to the playgrounds, where they can go to each other's houses and just be kids, have fun, enjoy themselves, be creative, be building things, working together, inventing stuff, deciding what they want to grow up and be, and just enjoy the things that you have created for our enjoyment, Lord. We ask that you would restore this, Lord, in every region, in every quadrant, in every place around the world. We ask this in your powerful name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jessie.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you all joining us today, and I will see you sometime soon. Just watch the schedule, okay? All right, guys. God bless you all. Take good care. Thank you so much for watching. And please like, share, subscribe. Let's get these algorithms up. Let's get this information out there. And yes, I will see you on the weekend. As I said, I've done a few pre-recorded shows. So Chris Latera and Dr. Juliet Engel will be on tomorrow, Friday. So watch the updates, and we will see you very soon.
Bye-bye.